At my wedding, my sister, who always needs to be the center of attention, brought out a cake and announced her pregnancy to steal the spotlight. I was prepared for her antics and said, "Wait a moment. There's someone important missing." The room fell silent, and now I'm being blamed for the breakdown of my sister's marriage. Okay, so basically, 3 days ago, I married my boyfriend Jason after 5 years together. 5 years of dealing with his terrible cooking, his habit of leaving wet towels on the bed, and somehow still deciding, yeah, this is the guy I want to spend forever with. But this story isn't really about him. Not yet, anyway. It's about my bratty sister, Allison. She's 26, which means she's old enough to know better. But apparently, that doesn't stop her from acting like she's still the center of the universe. Allison has always been like this, you know, ever since we were kids. If I got a new toy, she'd scream until Mom and Dad bought her something bigger. If I made honor roll, she'd suddenly have some dramatic crisis that needed everyone's attention. It's exhausting, honestly. And the older we got, the worse it became. At my college graduation, a day I'd worked 4 years for, a day where I was supposed to feel proud and accomplished, Allison stood up during the family dinner afterward and announced her engagement. Just like that. Didn't even wait for dessert. She literally interrupted my dad's toast to me, pulled out this massive ring, and suddenly everyone's taking photos of her hand and congratulating her instead of, I don't know, acknowledging that I just graduated summa cum laude. My mom actually cried happy tears, not for me, but for Allison's engagement. I remember sitting there with my graduation cap still on my head, feeling completely invisible. Then there was my bridal shower. I'd planned it for months with my best friend Katie. We'd rented this cute little venue, had personalized decorations, the whole thing. It was supposed to be about celebrating my upcoming wedding, right? Well, Allison showed up an hour late in this brand new Tesla. Not just any Tesla, like a fully loaded Model S in bright red, and she made this huge production of it, insisting that everyone come outside to see it. She gave a whole speech about her promotion at work and how she was treating herself and investing in her future. Meanwhile, my bridal shower games were getting cold inside and the mimosas were getting warm. Half the guests didn't even come back in for another 30 minutes because Allison was giving them all test rides around the block. I should have seen it coming, honestly. But I guess part of me hoped that maybe, just maybe, she'd grown up a little. That she'd realize my wedding day was supposed to be my day, not hers. Just one single day where I got to be the center of attention in our family. I was wrong. About a week before the wedding, I got a call from my baker, Christina. She's this sweet lady who runs a small bakery downtown, and she'd been nothing but professional the entire time we'd been planning my wedding cake. But when she called me that Tuesday afternoon, her voice sounded different. Nervous. Kind of shaky. Hey, I need to talk to you about something, she said. It's about your wedding cake. My heart dropped immediately. You know that feeling when someone starts a sentence like that and you just know something's wrong? I was thinking she was going to tell me she couldn't do it anymore or the bakery flooded or something actually catastrophic. What's wrong? I asked, already mentally scrambling for backup bakery options. Nothing's wrong with your cake, Christina said quickly. Your cake is beautiful and it's going to be perfect. It's just that, well, your sister contacted me. I felt my stomach twist. Allison contacted you? Yeah, Christina said, and I could hear her taking a deep breath. She called me 3 days ago and said she wanted to order a second cake for your wedding. A surprise cake. She told me that you were the one who wanted the surprise, but that I should only communicate with her about it, not you. A surprise cake, I repeated slowly, my brain trying to process what I was hearing. A pregnancy announcement cake, Christina clarified. Blue and pink decorations, the whole thing. She said it was supposed to be a surprise for everyone at the reception, including you, and that you'd specifically requested it as a way to announce her pregnancy to the family. I sat down on my couch, feeling like someone had punched me in the gut. Of course. Of course Allison was planning to announce a pregnancy at my wedding. It was so predictable I almost wanted to laugh, except I was too angry. And here's the thing, Christina continued, her voice getting a little stronger. She offered to pay me double what you're paying for your wedding cake if I kept quiet about it and only dealt with her. She what? I said, my voice coming out sharper than I intended. Double, Christina confirmed. She really wanted me to keep this secret. But look, I've been doing this for 15 years and I've seen a lot of family drama play out over cakes. And something about this just felt wrong. You know, like if you really wanted a surprise pregnancy announcement cake for your sister, you would have mentioned it to me yourself. Plus, the way she kept emphasizing that I shouldn't tell you, that I should only contact her. It just seemed suspicious. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Christina, thank you so much for telling me. You have no idea how much I appreciate this. So, I'm guessing you didn't actually want this surprise cake, she asked, and I could hear the relief in her voice. No, I said firmly. Definitely not. Allison is planning to hijack my wedding with a pregnancy announcement, and she was trying to use you to do it. I'm really sorry, Christina said. I just wanted to make sure I was doing the right thing. You absolutely did the right thing, I assured her. In fact, you're the only person in this whole situation who has done the right thing. After we hung up, I sat there on my couch for a good 10 minutes, just staring at the wall. Part of me wanted to call Allison right then and scream at her. Another part of me wanted to call my parents and tell them what she was planning. But then a third part of me, the part that had been dealing with Allison's attention-seeking behavior for 28 years, had a different idea. If Allison wanted to make a scene at my wedding, fine. But I wasn't going to just sit back and let it happen. I was going to get ahead of it. I called Jason immediately. He picked up on the second ring, probably because he could hear the tension in my voice from the way I'd said his name when I called. What's wrong? He asked. Allison is planning to announce her pregnancy at our wedding, I said flatly. She ordered a surprise cake from Christina and tried to bribe her to keep it secret from me. There was a long pause. Then Jason said very slowly, "Are you freaking kidding me?" I wish I was. I'm going to kill her, Jason said, which was actually kind of sweet considering he's usually the calm, rational one in our relationship. No, I said, and I could feel a plan forming in my mind. We're going to do something better. We're going to make sure that when she tries to steal our wedding, it blows up in her face. I'm listening, Jason said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. So, I told him my plan, and then I made a few phone calls. The first call was to a private investigator named Robert that my coworker had used during her divorce. I explained the situation, told him I needed someone to follow Allison for about a week, and he quoted me a price that made me wince, but also felt worth it. You want me to document where she goes, who she meets with, that kind of thing? Robert asked. Exactly, I said. I have a feeling my sister isn't just planning to ruin my wedding. I think there's more going on. I was right. Robert called me back 4 days later with a report that made my jaw drop. Allison had been meeting up with someone regularly. Her ex-boyfriend from 2 years ago, Nathan, the guy she supposedly broke up with when she got serious with her husband, Mark. They'd been seen at 3 different hotels over the past week, always during the day when Mark was at work. Robert had photos, timestamps, everything. But that wasn't even the best part, or I guess the worst part, depending on how you looked at it. Robert had also been monitoring Nathan's social media and public records. Turns out Nathan was married, had been for a year and a half. His wife's name was Jennifer, and according to her Instagram, she had no idea her husband was spending his lunch breaks in hotel rooms with my sister. I sat there looking at Robert's report, feeling this weird mix of disgust and vindication. Allison wasn't just planning to announce her pregnancy at my wedding. She was planning to announce a pregnancy that probably wasn't even her husband's. The second call I made was to Nathan. I got his number from his business website. He was some kind of financial consultant. When he picked up, I kept my voice casual and friendly. Hi, is this Nathan? I asked. Yeah, who's this? My name is Jennifer's friend, I lied smoothly. She told me to call you about the surprise she's planning. There was a long pause. I'm sorry. What? For the party this weekend, I continued, watching my words carefully. She said you'd know what I was talking about. Another pause. Then Nathan said very carefully, I think you have the wrong number. Oh, maybe I do, I said, letting some doubt creep into my voice. This is Nathan, right? Jennifer's husband? Yeah, but I don't know what party you're talking about, he said, and I could hear the suspicion in his voice now. That's weird, I said. Well, anyway, she mentioned you'd be at a wedding this Saturday. The Johnson wedding. I'm not going to any wedding, Nathan said, but his voice had gotten tighter. Oh, my mistake then, I said cheerfully. I hung up before he could respond, feeling pretty pleased with myself. If Nathan wasn't planning to attend my wedding, I was about to make sure he did. The third call I made was to Jennifer, Nathan's wife. I used a burner phone app for this one, not wanting to leave a trail. Hello, she answered, sounding distracted. Hi, is this Jennifer? I asked. Yes, who's calling? My name is Christina, and I'm calling from the Hartford Plaza Hotel, I said, naming one of the hotels where Robert had documented Nathan and Allison meeting up. I'm calling because we found a credit card that we believe belongs to your husband, Nathan, and we wanted to return it to him. Oh, Jennifer said, sounding surprised. That's weird. He hasn't mentioned losing his credit card. Are you sure it's his? Yes, ma'am. The name on the card is Nathan Reeves, and this phone number was listed in our system from a previous stay. A previous stay? Jennifer said slowly, and I could hear the suspicion creeping into her voice. When was he there? Let me check, I said, pretending to look something up. It looks like he's checked in multiple times over the past few months. The most recent was last Wednesday afternoon. There was a long, heavy silence. Then Jennifer said, her voice very quiet, last Wednesday afternoon. Yes, ma'am, I said, keeping my voice professional and neutral. And you said he's been there multiple times? Yes, ma'am. According to our records. Another long silence. Then Jennifer said, thank you for calling. I'll make sure to get that card from him. She hung up before I could respond. And I sat there feeling a little guilty, but mostly satisfied. If everything went according to plan, Jennifer would do some digging, find out about Allison, and show up at my wedding with some very interesting questions for her husband. The day of the wedding arrived faster than I expected. I'd barely slept the night before, running through everything in my head, making sure all the pieces were in place. Jason had been amazing through all of it, helping me coordinate with Robert, making phone calls to confirm certain details, and most importantly, keeping me calm when I started to freak out about whether this was all too much. She was going to ruin your wedding anyway, he reminded me the night before, holding my hand across our kitchen table. All you're doing is making sure the truth comes out. I know, I said. This is going to destroy her marriage. She destroyed her own marriage, Jason said firmly. That's not on you. The ceremony itself was perfect. The weather cooperated, the flowers looked beautiful, and when Jason and I said our vows, I actually forgot about Allison for a few minutes. It was just us standing there in front of our friends and family, promising to love each other forever. His voice cracked a little when he said, I do, and I squeezed his hands to let him know it was okay. But then we moved to the reception, and I felt my heart start pounding again. Allison was there in a pale pink dress that was probably chosen to look good in pregnancy announcement photos, and she kept glancing at her watch like she was waiting for something. Mark, her husband, looked uncomfortable and kept trying to hold her hand, but she kept pulling away to check her phone. We cut our actual wedding cake first. The beautiful 3-tier vanilla and raspberry creation that Christina had made. Everyone clapped and took photos. And for a moment, I thought maybe Allison had changed her mind. Maybe Christina had talked her out of it. Or maybe she'd realize how inappropriate it would be. But then, right as we were serving the first slices of cake to our guests, Allison stood up from her table. Excuse me, everyone, she called out, her voice loud and bright. I have something really important I'd like to share. The room went quiet. People turned to look at her, some of them already smiling in anticipation of whatever announcement she was about to make. My parents, sitting at the family table, looked confused but excited. Mark looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Allison smiled and gestured to Christina, who I'd already warned about this moment. Christina reluctantly wheeled out the second cake, the pregnancy announcement cake with its blue and pink decorations and, "We're expecting," written in frosting across the top. The room exploded with gasps and excited chatter. People immediately got up from their tables, crowding around Allison and Mark to congratulate them. My parents were the worst. Like seriously, the absolute worst. My mom started crying, actual tears streaming down her face, and my dad grabbed Mark in this huge bear hug. They completely abandoned our table. Didn't even glance back at me and Jason, just rushed over to swarm around Allison like she just announced she won the lottery. At least some of my relatives had enough sense to stay by my side. My Aunt Patricia gave me this apologetic look and squeezed my shoulder. My cousin Michael muttered something about "typical Allison" under his breath. But most of the guests, especially the people from my parents' side of the family, gathered around Allison, making this huge fuss about the baby news. I sat there at my wedding table, in my wedding dress, on my wedding day, and watched my sister steal my spotlight just like I knew she would. Jason was gripping my hand under the table so hard it almost hurt, and I could see his jaw clenching. After a few minutes of the chaos, Allison turned to look at me. She had this fake concerned expression on her face, like she suddenly remembered this was supposed to be my day. "Oh, we should probably get back to your wedding now," she said, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "Sorry for the interruption." The way she said it, with that slight smile playing at her lips, made my blood boil. She wasn't sorry at all. She'd planned this, orchestrated it, probably been looking forward to this moment for weeks. The interruption was the whole point. I took a deep breath, squeezed Jason's hand back, and stood up. I walked over to where Allison was holding court, still surrounded by well-wishers and people wanting to touch her belly, even though there was barely anything there yet. "Allison," I said, and my voice came out surprisingly steady. "I'm so happy for you. This is such wonderful news." She looked surprised that I was being nice about it, like she'd expected me to throw a fit or start crying. I could see the confusion flash across her face for just a second before she covered it with another smile. "Thanks, sis," she said. And she actually had the audacity to hug me. I know the timing isn't perfect, but I just couldn't wait to share the news with everyone. "Of course," I said, pulling back from the hug and keeping that smile plastered on my face. But wait, hold on a second. The room started to quiet down again. People sensing that something else was about to happen. Allison's smile faltered slightly. "Someone really important is missing from this celebration," I continued, looking around the room like I was searching for someone. "We can't properly congratulate you without them here." Allison's face went from confused to pale in about 2 seconds flat. Mark, standing next to her, looked between us with this bewildered expression. He clearly had no idea what I was talking about. "What do you mean?" Allison asked, and I could hear the tiniest tremor in her voice. I gave a signal to Jason, who was standing by the reception hall doors. He opened them, and Nathan walked in. The change in Allison's face was instant. All the color drained out of it. Her eyes went wide, and her mouth literally dropped open. She looked like she'd just seen a ghost, or maybe something worse. Mark looked at Nathan, then at Allison, then back at Nathan. Nathan stood there in the doorway, looking just as uncomfortable as I'd hoped he'd be. I'd extended him a personal invitation to the wedding, telling him that Allison had specifically requested his presence for her big announcement. He'd been confused when I called him, probably trying to figure out how I knew about their affair, but ultimately he'd agreed to come. I think his ego couldn't resist being part of whatever Allison had planned. "Nathan," I said, my voice carrying across the now silent room. "Thank you so much for coming. I thought it was important that you be here for this announcement since, well, according to these text messages from last month, you might want to know about this pregnancy, too." I pulled out my phone and held it up. On the screen were screenshots of text messages between Allison and Nathan. Messages that Robert had recovered from Allison's cloud backup after she'd been careless enough to use the same password for everything. Messages that very explicitly detailed their affair, complete with hotel room numbers and times they'd meet up. The room exploded. Like completely and utterly exploded. People started talking all at once, some gasping, some asking what was happening, some just staring in shocked silence. My mom actually screamed, "What?" so loud that people near her jumped. Allison tried to deny everything. She started talking really fast, saying the texts were fake, that I'd made them up, that she didn't know what I was talking about, but her face was still ghost white and her hands were shaking. And honestly, nobody was buying it. Mark looked like someone had hit him with a baseball bat. He just stood there completely frozen, staring at Nathan with this expression of total betrayal and confusion. That's when Mark reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. "I got these DNA results yesterday," he announced, his voice cutting through all the chaos. The room went silent again, everyone turning to look at him. "What?" Allison whispered, all the blood draining from her face. "I had the lab run tests on items from our bathroom," Mark continued, his voice getting stronger. "Hair samples, toothbrush, that kind of thing. Want to guess whose DNA matched the pregnancy test you left on the counter 3 weeks ago?" He looked directly at Nathan, his face hard and cold. "It's yours. The conception date lines up exactly with when I was in Chicago for work." Nathan's face went pale now, too. He started backing toward the door, shaking his head. I didn't know about any pregnancy," he stammered. Mark turned to him. "And I'd never seen someone look so betrayed in my entire life." "You didn't know because she was playing both of us, you idiot," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "She's been sleeping with both of us, telling each of us different things, and neither of us had any idea." That's when things really went off the rails. The reception hall doors burst open again, and a woman I'd never seen before stormed in. She was short, maybe 5 feet 3 inches, with dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail and wearing jeans and a hoodie. She looked around the room for about half a second before her eyes locked on Nathan. "You asshole," she screamed, and before anyone could react, she crossed the room in like 5 steps and slapped Nathan across the face so hard the sound echoed through the hall. Everyone gasped. Nathan stumbled backward, his hand flying to his cheek. The woman, who I assumed was Jennifer, Nathan's wife, was shaking with rage. 3 years, she screamed at him, her voice cracking. 3 goddamn years we've been married, and you've been, around behind my back. Jennifer, I can explain, Nathan started, but she cut him off. Explain what? She yelled. Explain the hotel receipts I found in your car? Explain the text messages I saw on your phone? Explain why the Hartford Plaza Hotel called me to say you left your credit card there after one of your little afternoon fuckfests. She reached down and yanked her wedding ring off her finger. Then, in this move that felt like something out of a movie, she threw it at Nathan's face. It bounced off his forehead and clattered to the floor. We're done, she said, her voice going cold. I'm filing for divorce on Monday, and I'm taking everything. The house, the car, the savings account, all of it. I hope she was worth it. She turned and looked at Allison, who was still standing there frozen in shock. And you, Jennifer said, her voice dripping with contempt. I hope you're happy. You're getting a cheater who's about to be broke and homeless. Congratulations on your big win. Then Jennifer turned and walked out of the hall, leaving this absolutely stunned silence behind her. But we weren't done yet. Not even close. My parents, who'd finally put together what was actually happening, slowly turned to look at Allison. My mom's face had gone from joyful tears to horror, and my dad looked like someone had just told him his favorite sports team had been eliminated. Allison, my mom said, her voice barely above a whisper. Tell me this isn't true. Allison opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She just stood there, tears starting to stream down her face, her whole body shaking. Answer your mother, my dad said, and his voice was hard in a way I'd never heard before. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, Allison finally choked out. Like this, my dad repeated. You didn't mean to cheat on your husband? You didn't mean to get pregnant by another man? You didn't mean to try to announce all of this at your sister's wedding? I thought Mark was the father, Allison said, which was obviously a lie because the texts I had clearly showed she knew she'd been with Nathan during the time she got pregnant. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. My mom started crying again, but these weren't happy tears anymore. These were tears of shame and disappointment. She looked at Allison like she was seeing her for the first time. I raised you better than this, my mom said, her voice breaking. I raised you to be a good person, to be honest, to respect your commitments. What happened to you? Mom, please, Allison begged, reaching out for her. But my mom stepped back. Don't touch me, she said. And the coldness in her voice made everyone nearby flinch. I don't even know who you are anymore. My dad put his arm around my mom's shoulders and turned to address the room. His face was red, and I could see veins standing out on his forehead. I want everyone here to know, he announced, his voice carrying across the silent hall. That as of right now, Allison is no longer part of this family. She's made her choices and she has to live with the consequences. Dad, no, Allison cried, but he held up a hand to silence her. You've embarrassed yourself. You've embarrassed your husband, and you've embarrassed this entire family, he continued. Worst of all, you tried to ruin your sister's wedding day, a day that's supposed to be about love and commitment, by announcing the results of your affair. I raised a monster, and I'm ashamed to call you my daughter. The words hit Allison like physical blows. She actually staggered backward, her hand clutching her stomach. People around her started backing away like whatever shame she was carrying was contagious. My mom was sobbing openly now, her face buried in my dad's shoulder. I felt this weird mix of vindication and guilt. I'd wanted the truth to come out, but watching my parents publicly disown my sister was harder than I thought it would be. Mark, who'd been standing there processing everything, suddenly seemed to snap out of his shock. His face went hard, and he walked over to where Allison was standing. I'm leaving, he said, his voice flat and emotionless. Right now. And I'm taking everything that belongs to me, which includes basically everything you own. Mark, wait, Allison pleaded, grabbing his arm. We can talk about this. We can fix this. He shook her off. Fix this? Fix this? His voice was rising now. You cheated on me. You got pregnant by another man, and you tried to pass the baby off as mine. What exactly do you think we can fix? He reached down and grabbed her purse from the table. Allison tried to snatch it back, but he held it away from her, rummaging through it until he found her car keys. These are to the Lexus I bought you, he said, holding up the keys. You know, the $40,000 car that's in my name? Yeah, I'm taking that back. You can't do that, Allison said, her voice panicking. How am I supposed to get home? Mark laughed. But it was this cold, bitter sound. That's not my problem anymore. Maybe Nathan can give you a ride. Oh, wait. His wife just left him, too. Maybe you can both walk. He pocketed her car keys and turned to leave. Allison grabbed his arm again, more desperately this time. Please, Mark, don't do this, she begged. I'm pregnant. I can't. I need help. You should have thought about that before you spread your legs for another man, Mark said coldly. And even though I was mad at Allison, that comment made me wince. He pulled his arm free and walked toward the exit. Allison tried to follow him, but he turned around and held up his phone. If you follow me, I'm calling the cops. We're done, Allison. Get a lawyer, because you're going to need one. Then he was gone, and Allison was left standing in the middle of my wedding reception, mascara running down her face, no way to get home, and basically everyone in the room staring at her with varying degrees of disgust and pity. She looked around desperately like she was trying to find someone, anyone, who would help her. Her eyes landed on a few of her friends who were sitting near the bar. "Kelly," she called out, walking toward them. "Can you give me a ride home?" Kelly, a girl I'd met a few times who worked with Allison, looked uncomfortable. She glanced at her boyfriend, then back at Allison. I don't think that's a good idea," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" Allison asked, her voice getting higher. "I just need a ride, Kelly. Please." "I'm sorry, Allison," Kelly said. And she did actually look sorry. "But I don't want to get involved in this. It's really messy." Allison turned to another group of people she knew. "Brandon? Michelle? Can someone please give me a ride?" But everyone was suddenly very interested in their phones or their drinks or literally anything other than looking at Allison. I watched her go from person to person, getting more and more desperate, and nobody would help her. What made it worse was that about half the guests had their phones out recording everything. The whole humiliating breakdown was being captured from multiple angles. "Please," Allison was saying, tears streaming down her face. "Someone, anyone, I just need to get home." But nobody moved. In fact, people were actively avoiding her now, turning away or walking to different parts of the room. And yeah, their phones were still out, still recording, catching every moment of her desperation. I sat back down at my table next to Jason, watching this unfold. Part of me felt bad for her. I mean, she's still my sister, even if she's a terrible person. But a bigger part of me felt like this was exactly what she deserved. "Do you think this is too much?" I whispered to Jason. He squeezed my hand. "She tried to ruin your wedding," he reminded me. "This is on her, not you." I nodded, but I couldn't shake this uncomfortable feeling in my stomach. Then I remembered something else I needed to address. Something that had come up in Robert's investigation that I hadn't shared with anyone yet. I stood up and walked over to where Allison was still standing in the middle of the room looking lost and broken. I pulled out my phone and opened up the folder of documents Robert had sent me. "Allison," I said, and my voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd. "There's one more thing we need to talk about." She looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy. "What more could you possibly want?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "You've already destroyed my life." "I destroyed your life?" I repeated, feeling anger flare up again. "You did this to yourself. But since we're here, since everyone's watching, let's talk about where you've been getting money for all those hotel rooms with Nathan." Her face went even paler. "If that was possible." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" I said, pulling up the bank statements on my phone. "Because I have copies of transactions from Grandma Helen's account. Grandma Helen, who has dementia and trusted you to help manage her finances. Grandma Helen, who you've been stealing from for the past 6 months." The room went completely silent. People stopped recording, stopped murmuring, just stared at us in shock. Grandma Helen was beloved by everyone in the family. She'd always been there for us, helped raise us when our parents were working, gave us advice and cookies and unconditional love. The idea that Allison had been stealing from her was almost worse than the affair. "I wasn't stealing," Allison protested weakly. "I was just borrowing." "Borrowing," I repeated. And I could hear my voice getting louder. "You withdrew $1,500 in cash over 3 months. You used her credit card to book hotel rooms. You even used her Amazon account to buy gifts for Nathan. That's not borrowing, that's theft." I looked around the room until I found the person I was looking for. Grandma Helen was sitting at a table near the back being helped to her feet by my Uncle Tom. She was 78 years old, and even with dementia, she was still sharp enough to understand what was happening. "Grandma," I called out gently. "Did you know about any of this?" She shook her head slowly, her hand trembling as she clutched her walker. "No," she said, her voice frail but clear. "Allison said she needed to help me organize my finances. I trusted her." Allison started crying harder. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I was going to pay it back, but... Grandma Helen wasn't listening. She pulled out her phone, which was always surprising because most people assumed she didn't know how to use it, but Uncle Tom had taught her, and she was actually pretty good with it. Tom, she said to my uncle. Call my lawyer. Now. Grandma, what are you doing? Allison asked, panic clear in her voice. I'm changing my will, Grandma Helen said firmly, her fingers moving across her phone screen. I've already got it pulled up here. Mr. Peterson can access it remotely and make changes while I watch. You don't have to do that, Allison said desperately, starting to walk toward her. Grandma, please. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back the money you stole, Grandma Helen said. And even though her voice was shaky, there was steel in it. Sorry doesn't make up for the fact that you betrayed my trust, that you used my dementia against me. Uncle Tom was on the phone with the lawyer, speaking in low tones and glancing between Grandma Helen and Allison. After a minute, he handed the phone to Grandma Helen. She spoke into it clearly. Mr. Peterson, I want Allison completely removed from my will. Everything that was going to her goes to her sister instead. Yes, I'm sure I'm of sound mind right now, and this is what I want. I'll come to your office on Monday to make it official, but I want it noted in the file right now with today's date and time. Allison's face went through about 5 different emotions: shock, horror, desperation, and then this terrible understanding. Grandma, that was $200,000, she whispered. I know, Grandma Helen said coldly. And now it's your sister's. She's never stolen from me. She's never lied to me. She deserves it more than you do. Allison looked like she was about to hyperventilate. She clutched at her chest, breathing in these short, sharp gasps. People around her started backing away even more, like they were afraid she was going to pass out or something. That's when Nathan, who'd been standing awkwardly near the door this whole time, spoke up. Allison, he said, his voice quiet but desperate. We need to talk. She turned to look at him. And for a second, I thought maybe she'd found an ally, someone who'd help her through this nightmare. But then Nathan kept talking. Jennifer's 6 months pregnant, he said, and the room went dead silent again. I didn't know. She just texted me. She's been hiding it, planning to surprise me. But now that she knows about us, she's telling everyone. Allison stared at him. She's what? 6 months pregnant, Nathan repeated, and he looked like he was about to cry. She's having my baby. A baby I actually wanted with her. A baby that's mine that she was going to tell me about before all this happened. You're such an ... Allison said, her voice breaking. You told me you weren't happy with her. You told me you wanted to leave her, that we'd be together. Nathan shook his head. I never said that. You heard what you wanted to hear. I was stupid and I cheated and I deserve everything that's happening to me. But so do you. So you were just using me? Allison screamed. And her voice had gotten shrill now. This whole time you were just ... around while your wife was pregnant? Yeah, Nathan said, his voice flat. I guess I was. And you were doing the same thing to Mark. So we're both terrible people, Allison. We deserve each other. That's when Allison completely lost it. She launched herself at Nathan, her hands going for his face. Her nails raked across his cheek, leaving 3 long scratches that immediately started bleeding. Nathan yelled and tried to push her away, but she was like a wild animal, hitting and scratching and screaming. Jason and 2 of the groomsmen rushed over to pull her off. It took all 3 of them to restrain her because she was thrashing so hard. In the chaos, she knocked into the pregnancy announcement cake, and the whole thing toppled off its table and crashed to the floor in this explosion of frosting and cake chunks. Blue and pink icing splattered everywhere. All over the floor, all over people's shoes, even on the bottom of Allison's dress. The "we're expecting" letters were destroyed, mixed in with the wreckage. It was weirdly symbolic watching that cake get destroyed after everything that had just happened. Let me go. Allison was screaming, still fighting against Jason and the groomsmen. Let me go. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. Allison, calm down, Jason was saying, trying to keep his grip on her arms without hurting her, but she wouldn't calm down. She kicked backward, catching one of the groomsmen in the shin. He yelped and almost let go, but managed to hold on. They finally managed to get her over to a chair and basically forced her to sit down. Nathan was standing there with his hand pressed to his bleeding cheek, looking absolutely miserable. And that's when he pulled out his phone and read something on the screen that made his face go even paler. Jennifer went into labor, he said, his voice barely audible. She's at the hospital. The stress triggered early labor. Then go. Someone from the crowd shouted. Go to your wife. Nathan looked at Allison one more time, and I swear I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Then he turned and practically ran out of the reception hall. Allison tried to get up to follow him, but Jason and the groomsmen held her down. You need to stay here, Jason said firmly. I need to go with him, Allison said, but her voice had lost its fight. She sounded defeated now, broken. No, you don't, Jason said. He made his choice. He's going back to his wife. You need to let him go. Allison slumped in the chair, fresh tears streaming down her face. And honestly, at this point, I thought maybe the worst was over. Maybe we could all just start packing up and trying to move on from this disaster of an evening. But then something happened that I hadn't planned for, hadn't even thought about. About half the guests had been recording everything on their phones. And while we'd been dealing with all the immediate drama, some of them had already started posting the videos online. Someone's Instagram story, someone else's TikTok, a few posts on Twitter. Within minutes, the videos were being shared, and within an hour, they'd gone viral. Allison's phone started buzzing constantly. At first, she ignored it, but then it just wouldn't stop. She finally picked it up and looked at the screen, and I watched her face go from defeated to horrified. No, she whispered, scrolling through her phone. No. What? I asked, even though part of me already knew. Everyone's seen it, she said, her voice hollow. My co-workers, my boss, my friends from college, everyone. They're all messaging me. They're all cutting me off. She held up her phone to show me, and I could see message after message popping up. People saying they couldn't believe what they saw. People saying they were disappointed in her. People saying they never wanted to talk to her again. Her boss had sent an email saying they needed to discuss her conduct first thing Monday morning, which was basically code for you're fired. Extended family members who hadn't even been at the wedding were messaging her, having seen the videos online. Old friends from high school were commenting on the posts. Even some of Mark's family members were sending her messages, and those weren't kind at all. My life is over, Allison said. And for the first time all night, I actually felt sorry for her. Everything is ruined. My marriage, my job, my family, everyone I know has seen this. She looked up at me with these desperate eyes. Make them take it down, she begged. Please make them delete the videos. I can't, I said. And it was true. I didn't post them. People recorded it on their own. It's out of my control now. Then tell them to stop sharing it, she pleaded. Tell them it's not what it looks like. But it is what it looks like, I said quietly. You cheated on your husband, tried to steal my wedding, and got caught. That's exactly what happened. She broke down completely then, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. People were still recording, still capturing every moment of her breakdown. It was brutal and sad and honestly really hard to watch. Jason pulled me aside. Hey, he said gently. I think we should wrap this up. This has gone far enough. I nodded, feeling emotionally exhausted. Yeah, you're right. We announced that the reception was ending early, thanked everyone for coming despite the drama, and started saying goodbyes to guests. Most people were understanding, though some seemed almost disappointed that the show was over. They hugged us, wished us well, and then disappeared into the parking lot, probably to rewatch the videos they'd recorded. My parents came over before they left. My mom hugged me tight, crying again. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry this happened at your wedding. I'm so sorry about your sister." "It's okay, Mom," I said, even though it wasn't really okay. "It's not your fault." My dad hugged me, too. And he whispered in my ear, "We should have believed you all those times you said Allison was causing problems. We should have seen it sooner." "It's okay," I repeated, because I didn't know what else to say. They left, and Allison was still sitting in that chair, her phone in her lap, staring at nothing. At some point, she'd stopped crying, and now she just looked empty. Hollow. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked, her voice small and broken. "Where am I supposed to go? Maybe try calling some friends?" I suggested. Even though we both knew that wasn't going to work, she tried. She called her best friend, Amy, but Amy didn't pick up. She called another friend. Same thing. She tried texting people, but got no responses. Everyone had seen the videos. Everyone knew what she'd done, and nobody wanted to be associated with her. Finally, as the venue staff started cleaning up the destroyed cake and rearranging chairs, Allison stood up and walked toward the exit. She didn't say goodbye, didn't look at me or Jason or anyone. She just walked out into the parking lot, still in her pink dress, and stood there looking at where her car should have been parked. But her car wasn't there because Mark had taken her keys. Jason and I watched through the window as she pulled out her phone again, probably trying to call an Uber or Lyft. But then we heard her curse, and we realized she probably didn't have any money left after Mark had canceled her credit cards because, yeah, Mark had already thought of that, too. He'd texted me earlier saying he was canceling all their joint accounts and cards. Allison ended up walking across the parking lot to Mark's car. The Lexus he'd taken her keys for. She tried the doors, but they were locked, so she did the only thing she could think of. She climbed into the back seat through a window he'd left slightly cracked for air. We watched her curl up in the back seat, and that's where she spent the night. In the parking lot of my wedding venue, in the back of her husband's car with nowhere else to go. "Should we do something?" Jason asked, looking concerned. "Like what?" I asked, feeling torn. "Take her home with us on our wedding night? Let her back into the family after everything she did?" He sighed. "I don't know. It just feels wrong leaving her like that." "She made her choices," I said. But even as I said it, I felt guilty. We went back inside to finish packing up our gifts and personal items. Christina, the baker, came up to me before she left. "I'm really sorry about all of this," she said, gesturing to the destroyed pregnancy cake that the staff was sweeping up. "I should have just refused to make that second cake." "It's not your fault," I assured her. "You did the right thing by telling me. If you hadn't, tonight would have been even worse." She gave me a sad smile and left. Slowly, the venue emptied out until it was just me, Jason, and a few venue staff members finishing the cleanup. The next morning arrived way too early. I woke up in the hotel room that was supposed to be the start of our honeymoon bliss. But instead of feeling excited, I felt emotionally drained and guilty and confused about everything that had happened. Jason was already awake, scrolling through his phone. When he saw me stir, he put the phone down quickly, but not before I caught a glimpse of what he'd been looking at. "Are people still posting about it?" I asked. He sighed. "Yeah, it's pretty much everywhere now. A few celebrity gossip sites even picked it up." "You're kidding." "I wish I was," he said, showing me his phone. Sure enough, there were articles with headlines like "Wedding Disaster," "Sister's Pregnancy Announcement Goes Horribly Wrong," and "Bride Exposes Sister's Affair at Reception." "How's Allison?" I asked, not entirely sure I wanted to know the answer. "Don't know," Jason said. "Should we check?" We got dressed and drove back to the venue, half expecting to find the parking lot empty. But Mark's Lexus was still there. And when we got closer, we could see Allison still in the back seat. She was awake, sitting up with her arms wrapped around her knees, her hair a mess, and her makeup from yesterday streaked down her face. Jason knocked on the window. She looked up, and for a second, I thought she might tell us to go away. But instead, she unlocked the door and climbed out. I didn't know where else to go, she said quietly, and she looked so small and defeated that despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy. Before I could say anything, a police car pulled into the parking lot. We all turned to watch as it parked next to the Lexus and 2 officers got out. "Are you Allison?" one of them asked. She nodded slowly, looking terrified. "We got a call from a Mark Sullivan," the officer said, pulling out a notepad. "He says you're in his vehicle without permission, and he wants you removed from the property." "This is my car, too," Allison protested weakly. "We're married." "The vehicle is registered in his name only," the officer said, reading from his notes. "And he's requesting that you vacate it immediately." "I don't have anywhere to go," Allison said, and her voice cracked. "That's not really our problem, ma'am," the second officer said, though he didn't sound happy about it. "We're just here to make sure you leave the vehicle." As if on cue, Mark pulled into the parking lot in an Uber. He got out, paid the driver, and walked over to where we were all standing. He didn't even look at Allison, just held out his hand to the officers. "I have the only set of keys," he said. "I'd like to take my car and leave now." "You can't do this," Allison said, turning to him. "Mark, please." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." "You should have thought about that before you cheated on me," Mark said coldly, unlocking the car with his key fob. "I came back for my car. That's it." He opened the door and started to get in, but Allison grabbed his arm. "Please," she begged. "I have nowhere to go. I don't have any money. I slept in your car last night." Mark paused. And for a second, I thought maybe he'd feel bad and help her out. But then he shook his head and pulled his arm free. "That's not my problem anymore," he said. "You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it." He got in the car, started it up, and drove away without looking back. The police officers watched him go, then turned back to Allison. "Ma'am, do you have somewhere you can go?" one of them asked, sounding more sympathetic now. "No," Allison whispered. "What about your parents?" "They disowned me last night." The officers exchanged a glance, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Well, you can't stay here," one of them said finally. "This is private property. If you don't have anywhere to go, we can give you information about local shelters." "I'm not going to a shelter," Allison said, her voice getting some of its old defiance back. "I'm pregnant. I can't stay in a shelter." "Those are your options, ma'am," the officer said. "We can't force anyone to take you in." Allison turned to me, her eyes desperate. "Please," she said. "I know I don't deserve it, but please, can I stay with you just for a few days until I figure something out?" Jason looked at me, and I could see the question in his eyes. "What do we do?" "No," I said, and it was harder to say than I expected. "I'm sorry, Allison, but no. After everything you did, after trying to ruin my wedding, after stealing from Grandma, after everything. I can't just let you back into my life like nothing happened." "I'm your sister," Allison said, tears streaming down her face again. "And you should have acted like it," I said. "You should have been happy for me instead of trying to steal my spotlight. You should have been honest instead of cheating and lying. You made your choices, Allison. Now you have to deal with the consequences." She stood there for a moment, swaying slightly like she might pass out. Then, without another word, she turned and started walking. Just walking in her ruined dress from yesterday with no destination and no plan. We watched her go until she turned a corner and disappeared from view. "That was rough," Jason said quietly. "Yeah," I agreed, feeling the guilt settle heavy in my chest. "But she did this to herself." "I know," he said, putting his arm around me. "Come on, let's go home." But we didn't go home. Not right away. About an hour later, while we were having breakfast at a diner and trying to process everything that had happened, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I answered it anyway. Hello, is this Allison's sister? A shaky elderly voice asked. Yes, this is her. Who's calling? This is Mrs. Henderson. I'm your grandmother Helen's neighbor, the woman said. I'm at your grandmother's house right now, and I think you should come over here. My heart started pounding. Why? What's wrong? Is Grandma okay? Your grandmother is fine, Mrs. Henderson said quickly. But Allison is here, and there's a situation. Jason and I raced over to Grandma's house, which was about 20 minutes away. When we pulled up, we saw Mrs. Henderson standing on the front porch looking worried, and we could hear yelling from inside. We ran up to the porch just as the front door opened, and Grandma Helen stood there, her walker in front of her, blocking the doorway. I said no. Grandma was shouting, her voice surprisingly strong. You're not welcome here, Allison. Grandma, please, Allison's voice came from inside, desperate and pleading. I just need a place to stay for a little while. I promise I'll pay you back for the money I took. With what money? Grandma demanded. You're about to lose your job. Your husband left you, and you've burned every bridge you had. You have nothing to pay me back with. I'll figure it out, Allison said. I'll get another job. I'll do whatever I have to do. Please just don't turn me away. You stole from me, Grandma said. And I could hear her voice shaking now. You looked me in my face. You told me you were helping me and you stole from me. My own granddaughter, who I helped raise, who I loved unconditionally, stole from me when I was most vulnerable. I'm sorry, Allison sobbed. I'm so sorry, Grandma. Sorry doesn't cut it, Grandma said firmly. Now get out of my house before I call the police. You're going to call the police on your own granddaughter? Allison asked incredulously. If I have to, yes, Grandma said. You're not the girl I raised. You've become someone I don't recognize, someone I don't want in my life anymore. There was a pause. And then Allison came stumbling out onto the porch. She was still in that same pink dress, now even more wrinkled and stained. She looked like she hadn't slept, which made sense since she'd spent the night in a car. When she saw me and Jason standing there with Mrs. Henderson, her face crumpled. You told Grandma about me trying to come here, didn't you? She accused. No, I said honestly. We just got here. Mrs. Henderson called us. Because I was worried, Mrs. Henderson interjected. Your grandmother is in her 70s with dementia. The last thing she needs is this kind of stress. Grandma appeared in the doorway behind Allison, and she was holding something in her hand. An envelope. Allison, Grandma said, her voice calm now, but still firm. Come here. Allison turned around slowly. I'm going to make you an offer, Grandma said. The only offer you're going to get from anyone in this family. She held out the envelope. There's $5,000 in here. Cash. It's enough to get you an apartment deposit, maybe a used car, some groceries. Enough to give you a fresh start somewhere new. Allison stared at the envelope, then at Grandma. What's the catch? The catch is you take this money and you leave, Grandma said. You leave this town, you leave this family, and you never contact any of us ever again. Not me, not your parents, not your sister, nobody. You're paying me to disappear? Allison asked, her voice hollow. I'm giving you a chance to start over somewhere where nobody knows what you did, Grandma corrected. But you have to promise me, on whatever shred of integrity you have left, that you will never come back here. Never call, never write, never show up at family events. You disappear completely. Grandma, that's not fair, I started to say. But Grandma held up her hand. This is between me and Allison, she said firmly. Then she looked back at my sister. So what's it going to be? Take the money and leave or stay here with nothing and nobody. Allison stood there for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. She looked at the envelope, then at Grandma, then at me. I could see the calculation happening in her eyes. $5,000 was more than she'd get anywhere else. More than our parents would give her, more than Mark would give her. Definitely more than Nathan would give her. If I take this, Allison said slowly, I'll never see any of you again. That's the deal, Grandma confirmed. More silence. Then Allison reached out and took the envelope. Fine, she said, her voice flat and emotionless. You want me gone? I'm gone. She didn't say goodbye. Didn't hug Grandma or look at me or acknowledge Mrs. Henderson. She just clutched that envelope to her chest, turned, and walked down the porch steps toward the street. We all watched her go. She made it to the corner, then pulled out her phone, and presumably called an Uber. Within 10 minutes, a car pulled up. She got in and she was gone. That was almost 12 hours ago. About an hour after Allison left, I got a single text message from an unknown number. You won, it said. Nothing else, just those 2 words. Then the number blocked me. I tried calling it back, but it went straight to a message saying the number was no longer in service. She'd probably gotten a burner phone with some of that $5,000, sent that one message, and then destroyed it. Jason and I helped Grandma back inside her house, made sure she was okay, and then finally, we went to pack for our honeymoon. The original resort I'd booked had been canceled by Allison weeks ago, which I'd found out through Robert's investigation. She'd called them pretending to be me, said there was a family emergency, and canceled the whole thing. The deposit was non-refundable, so we'd lost about $3,000, but you know what? I'd planned for that, too. I'd made a second reservation at a different resort under Jason's name using his credit card with a different confirmation number that Allison would never have been able to find. So, while she'd been plotting to ruin my honeymoon, I'd been plotting to make sure we had one anyway. I also found out through Robert's investigation that Allison had been using her company computer and work email to arrange some of her meetups with Nathan. She'd been sending personal emails during work hours, using company time and resources for her affair. So, I'd compiled all of that evidence and sent it to her HR department with a nice little note explaining the situation. That's why her boss had sent that email at the reception about needing to discuss her conduct. They'd already been planning to fire her before she even showed up to work on Monday. They'd just been waiting to do it in person. But after the videos went viral, and several coworkers emailed HR saying they were uncomfortable working with Allison, they'd sent her a termination letter that same night. She'd lost her job before the reception was even over. Mark's mother had also been at the wedding sitting at one of the family tables. I'd made sure to have copies of all the evidence about Allison's affair ready for her because I knew something that Allison had conveniently forgotten. The down payment for Allison and Mark's house had come from Mark's mom. $50,000 that she'd lent them with the agreement that it would be paid back over time and the house would technically be in her name until it was paid off. After seeing everything that went down at the reception, Mark's mom had gone straight home and contacted her lawyer. At around midnight last night, while Allison was sleeping in Mark's car in the parking lot, Mark's mom had filed paperwork to reclaim her down payment and forced the sale of the house. Since the house was still technically in her name, she had every legal right to do it. Which meant that not only had Allison lost her husband, her job, her family, and her inheritance, she was also about to lose her home. And there was one more thing, one more detail that I discovered and had been waiting for the right moment to reveal. During Robert's investigation, he'd noticed something weird about the pregnancy test that Mark had found. The dates didn't match up with when Allison claimed she got pregnant. She'd been telling everyone she was about 6 weeks along, but the pregnancy test Mark found was from nearly 3 weeks ago. If she'd actually gotten pregnant around the time she was claiming, the test would have been taken more recently, which meant she'd lied about when she got pregnant, probably to make it seem more likely that Mark was the father. I'd shared this information with Mark privately, giving him copies of everything so he could use it in the divorce proceedings. Between the affair, the stealing, the lying about the pregnancy, and everything else, Mark's lawyer was confident that he'd get an extremely favorable divorce settlement. The absolute final twist, I discovered through Robert that the pregnancy test wasn't even Allison's in the first place. She'd bought it at a drugstore, used it, and then planted it in their bathroom to make Mark think she was pregnant. But she'd been so sloppy that she'd left the receipt in her purse, and Mark had found it during one of his own investigations after becoming suspicious. So, not only had Allison been cheating, stealing, and lying, she'd also been faking a pregnancy to try to trap Mark into staying with her even after he found out about the affair. And then, when she'd realized that wasn't going to work, she decided to announce the pregnancy at my wedding as a way to lock herself in and make it harder for Mark to leave her without looking like a monster. The whole thing had been this elaborate manipulation from the start, and it had all come crashing down in the most spectacular way possible. Now, Jason and I are sitting in our new resort's lobby, waiting for the shuttle to take us to the beach. We're scrolling through our phones, looking at the photos our friends have been sending us from the wedding. Photos of the ceremony, the first dance, the cutting of the actual wedding cake, and yeah, photos of all the chaos that came after. Katie, my best friend who'd helped plan the bridal shower that Allison ruined, sent me a text this morning. I know yesterday was insane, but I also think it was kind of perfect. Allison finally faced consequences for being a terrible person, and you got the wedding story of a lifetime. Plus, you and Jason are married now, and nothing can change that. She's right. Despite everything that happened, despite all the drama and chaos and family implosion, I married the love of my life yesterday. I married someone who stood by me through all of this, who helped me plan my revenge, who never once told me I was going too far or that I should just let Allison get away with it. My phone buzzes with another message, this time from Uncle Tom. Your grandmother is resting. The doctor says her stress levels are back to normal. She wanted me to tell you she's proud of you for standing up for yourself and she's sorry she didn't see what Allison was doing sooner. I smile at that message and show it to Jason. He grins and squeezes my hand. You ready for this honeymoon? He asks. More than ready, I say. No more family drama, no more Allison. Just us on a beach and a week of doing absolutely nothing. Jason leans over and kisses me softly. Best wedding gift ever, he says against my lips. The shuttle pulls up outside, and we grab our bags and head out. As we walk toward the beach, I toss my phone in my bag, not planning to look at it for at least a few days. Me and Jason walk toward the water, hand in hand, and I don't look back.
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.